So I'm going to call this 5-6 Part 3. And so in the book, they call it Finding the Whole. And so they give you example 3 and 4, and you can look at those, and it may make more sense to you. I don't know. But I'm going to show you how I would solve these kinds of problems, and two different ways to solve them, and it'll be up to you. And I'll just show you that when I'm done showing you this, I've given you 10 problems that you're going to do, and that will be your math for tonight, or for today if you get it done today. So when I talk about finding the whole, they're going to give you a percent of a number, but you don't know what that number is. And that's the way I wrote it. I put a question mark right there. So in this first example, I wrote 75% of a number. And again, you don't know what that number is. But whatever 75% of that number is 48. So it's kind of like they're giving you the answer, but not all of the problem. And so here's how you solve these kinds of problems. So you just simply divide, in this case, 48 by 75%. Now, right, exactly, and Mr. Lesor just recognized that. Remember, 75 as 75%, if we wrote it as a decimal or change it into a decimal, it would be 0.75. And that's what I did there. I put 0.75. So let's look at the two ways that you could solve that problem. 48 divided by 0.75 is one way, or 48 divided by 3/4. And remember that 0.75 is the same as 3/4. And I remember telling you guys, I don't know, I did it in the beginning of the year and also more recently, that you should be able to, there's some fractions and decimals that you should just automatically know what they represent. If I ask you guys, what's 1/2 as a decimal? You know it's 0.5. Or if I said, what's 0.5 as a fraction? You should know it's 1/2. You guys should know those automatically. And 0.75 is another one. If I said, what's 0.75 as a fraction?
3/4.
3/4. Okay, what's 0.25 as a fraction?
1/4.
1/4. Okay. So some of these you should know by now. You should have them embedded in your gray cells, and you wouldn't have to try to figure it out. You would just know it. Now, if it was something kind of odd, like, I don't know, maybe I said 30, if I said 37%, what's that as a decimal? Well, you just move the decimal place, or move the decimal 2 places over, it's 0.37, and from there you could work if that's reducible over 100, and you could turn that into a fraction. But for now, I'm not going to worry about that. I just want you guys to know that there's 2 ways to solve it. One is you could take 48 and divide it by 0.75, or you could take 48 and divide it by 3/4. Either way will work. Either way, you're going to get the same answer. So remember, if I divided 48 by 0.75, remember, you can't divide a number by a number that has a decimal. You would have to move the decimal 2 places over, so it would become 75 going into, where's the decimal in the 48? It's right here. You would have to move that 2 places, so it would become 4,800. Just remember, you got to move the decimal over. If this is the method that you chose. Okay? So quick refresher on that. This is something that you guys went over, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago when we did a lot of division. The other option is dividing it by a fraction, and this was even longer ago, but let's do that. 48 divided by 3/4. Do you remember keep, change, flip? Keep it as 48, okay, which actually would be 48 over what? 1. Change it to?
Multiplication.
And flip it to?
4 over 3.
Okay. That's the other way you could solve these problems. Change it into a fraction, do the keep, change, flip. Uh-oh, low on disk space. Oh, man. All right. So, questions on that, anybody? All right, so here's another example I gave you. 40% of a number is 120. So, what do? You take 120 and you divide it by 0.40, or
0.4.
you could take 120 and divide it by 4 over 10, which, and 4 over 10 reduces down to 2/5. And then you would do the keep, change, flip.
Seems simple enough.
Okay? Those are the two ways to solve those kinds of problems. And I would be shocked if you didn't have some questions like that on this chapter test you will, but also on the testing toward the end of the year, the state testing. They'll ask you something and they'll phrase it that way. It'll be a percent of a number equals, and they'll give you a number, and what is it? And just remember, you divide it, and you can change it to a fraction or keep it the same. Before we do these, let me just put one more up here, and you guys can all try it. We'll do it together here. I just scribbled one down. How about if I wrote 25% of something, we don't know what it is, equals 80. Let me pull a stick here, and I'll try not to knock over my coffee. And Mr. Marquardt, do you know the first thing we do? Yes or no? Okay. Ms. Russell, what's the first thing we do? Okay. When I explain a method on how to do something, you guys, and I saw some of you writing some things down, it's a really, really good idea, and I've said this before, is to write down the examples that I gave you. And that way you could refer back to them. I see Miss Scott has her hand up. Miss Scott, do you know the first thing you would do?
80 divided by 0.25.
Yep. Nicely done. Put up 50 points. 80 divided by, what did you say, honey?
0.25.
0.25. So she already converted it from the percent to a decimal. Nicely done. I'm going to ask another question here, Mr. Conyers. What's another way we could solve that problem? Okay. Miss Sensor, what's another way we could solve that problem?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Miss Harley, we're up to 150 points here.
You would put 80 in the box and then 25 on the outside of the box.
No, I'm looking for another way to represent the 0.25 is what I was talking about.
I don't know.
Don't know? Mr. Rainbolt, we're up to 200 points.
Put 80 divided by a 1/4.
Nicely done, 200 points. Well done. 80 divided by 1/4. Okay? Those are the two examples that I gave you guys. I said one way is to change the percent into a decimal. which I don't remember who said that first. And then the other way is, as Mr. Rainbolt just pointed out, change it into a fraction. And then I went over how to do those. You guys should know how to do that. I'll just go ahead and do a real quick reminder here. 80 divided by 0.25, I'll put 80 in the box. I'm dividing it by 0.25, okay? I would change the 0.25 to 25, but then I would have to add 2 zeros in here, so it becomes 8,000 divided by 25. The other one is 80 divided by 1/4. So I would change that to 80 over 1 divided by 1/4. And then I would change that using the keep, change, flip, keep it to 8, keep it as 80 over 1, change it to multiplication, and flip it to 4 over 1. And then I would just simply do 80 times 4 equals, what? Anybody know? What's 4 times 8? Mr. Williams? You had your hand up?
28?
Nope. Mr. Lesor?
Oh, 320.
Over 1 equals 320. Okay. Anyways, took that a little bit further. But so that's how you solve these problems. These two choices. It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay? These are the 10, whoops. These are the 10 problems I want you to do. So what have we got here? We got 40% of something equals 110. 30% of something equals 90. 20% of something equals 100. 60%, and then 120. Number 5 is 10%, and then 300. 6 is 15%, and 100. 7 is 25%, and 50. 8 is 30%, and 40. 9 is 70% of something is 50, and finally 80%, number 10, 80% of something equals 40. A little longer video than I expected. Stop video recording.